Hi, everyone. So excited to be here, especially with our guest today. You know, Beverly, she's here pretty much every Tuesday. I'd say every Tuesday, and it only gets better. I've gotten to know Beverly over time, and if you don't, this is a great opportunity. Also, through Beverly's recommendation, I got a chance to meet Helena, who's just a lovely individual, but more importantly, brings so much value to everything she does. So it's a great opportunity to get to know Helena. And chat's wide open. We depend on chat to be relevant and to bring some valuable takeaways. The word of the day is boundaries, so we can all start thinking about that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Beverly, and she can bring us up to date and initial thoughts on boundaries. Beverly.
Okay, well, of course, it's Tuesday, and I'm always excited, Dawn, to be here with you on Tuesday. And to have Helena is a real honor. Just to tell everybody, she's got a wealth of information, and Helena is on exactly the same page as I am. And for those who are new to my world, I'm Beverly Glazer, and sometimes I'm a coach, sometimes I'm a therapist, sometimes I'm a consultant, sometimes I'm all kinds of things. But basically, what I do is I help women leaders, and creatives to connect those missing links, connect the missing links between their personal and their professional life because things happen. And what happens is, you're doing really well in your work, and then you come home and your kids don't want to know you, or you don't have much of a relationship with your colleagues and they're bringing you back down and you're all frustrated. Anyway, it's those things, the things in your mind, the things that you don't say to other people. This is what coaching is about. This is what getting help is about. It's really about you. And so we count on you, people in the audience. We count on what you have to say. And this is just a friendly conversation that Dawn has evolved over the years, which is, and I've literally years now, Dawn. And what's nice about it is we just talk. Okay. But we're not just talking heads. We're giving advice, and hopefully you get value with what we say. And that's what Dawn's shows are all about. So Tuesday is women empowerment, and I've talked more than enough about me. So let's talk about Helena. And I'm in Canada. Dawn is in Denver, and Helena, you're in Spain. Is that right?
Exactly. I'm in the south of Spain in the wonderful Andalusia. And thank you so much, Don and Beverly, to have me here on this show. I am thrilled to be here, and especially on the topic of boundaries. I love to talk about boundaries, so you will have to stop me somewhere. So, who am I? I am a Belgian living in the south of Spain. I love dogs. I have an amazing dog. And I am a transformation coach or guide for smart, conscious, and high achieving women. I support them to get out of their own way, break their inner glass ceiling, and find fulfillment and build unstoppable momentum in every aspect of their lives. Because a lot of women wake up one day and they ask themselves, is this all there is? I invested so much time in my professional, in my career, in my business, and I'm pretty successful, and yet I feel depleted, I feel exhausted, I feel disconnected. There must be more than this. And of course, there's more than that. And I'm so happy to, because boundaries basically is one of the things that is involved in this game. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I can't wait to have this conversation started.
Well, I can't wait either. And I learned so much from each one of you from what you've already said because, in one way we're talking about boundaries, and another way we're talking about being more expressive, being more open, allowing people in, allowing ourselves to get in with other people. And it's the collective or the collaborative coming together that really brings wholeness to most
Mhm.
people, and more importantly, their vision of the future. And you're right, Helena, when all you think is this all there is? There has to be more than this. It's how much of us allow ourselves to expand into new areas, learn from people. What I love about the show is we try to create a safe environment where people are comfortable sharing and learning together, but also growing together. Because, why start if you don't have a result in mind? And typically that will change with time. But it's really just allowing oneself to be who you are and having your true voice and having a platform to share. Well, we've got some comments early on. Dennis is our old reliable. Agree, we shouldn't mind getting coaching and learning.
That's
And
for sure.
here's something, and you sound smart in Canada. Well, it just shows you. Beverly's in Montreal. Uh, Helena's out in Spain. I'm out in Colorado. We've got a new name here, which I don't recognize, but I'm so grateful for your presence today, Yvette. Welcome. Hope we can bring value. Carrie's here with his early joke. You can distinguish an alligator from a crocodile by paying attention to whether the animal sees you later or in a while. Okay, that's always a good way to go. So, Beverly, with a little bit of levity now with us.
Yeah, first, thank you, Carrie. We always welcome your jokes, Carrie. Okay. Always, always, always. And I don't know, you have a wealth of them. I don't know where you get them, but let me tell you, they're always there. Terrific. Thank you. We welcome everyone and everyone's comments, and they help us, believe me. And what I want to go back to is the subject of boundaries. Boundaries can be very, very difficult for women. They can, of course, be difficult for men as well. But for women, we wear so many hats. And as Helena was saying, is that all there is? I see that all the time. When you're putting pressure on yourself to be all things to all people, you lose yourself in the mix. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what boundaries is about. It is what's next for me. And women, because historically we've made to feel perhaps guilty if we don't give to others. This is what happens in this world because there's so many things that women can do today. We can work, we can take care of family, we can run businesses, we can end up taking care of our parents, we end up filling so many different roles that we have to set boundaries or there's burnout. And so if you get nothing from these sessions today, don't think that you're selfish if you say no. Don't think that you're selfish if you say, I cannot do it. Don't think that you're selfish if you can have to say, I need a break. And if you're setting those boundaries, do not feel guilty. And so this is one thing I want you to remember for the entire hour. And if you have to check out at any time, I want you to get this because it is about you. And you cannot help other people unless you take care of yourself too. If you burn out, if you are in such a bad mood all the time because you just don't feel appreciated, how can you be your best self? How can you? And so this is what boundaries do for you and what they also do for other people because they want to see you in a good mood. They want to see you happy. They don't want to see, oh, that miserable person out there. So think boundaries is a good thing, not pushing people away, but making yourself better so that you can be more whole and do more for more people. Helena.
Oh, Helena, what's your thoughts?
I love that, Beverly. And what I hear very often, also with the women I work with, is that we are setting boundaries once we are depleted, once we are tired, once we are frustrated. And I would say that boundaries are basically a kind of rules of engagement, rules of engagement for ourselves and also for our interactions with others and with the world. And the funny thing is, if we think of that, the best thing to do is to set your rules of engagement at the beginning of a relationship, at the beginning of an endeavor, at the beginning of a project, not when you are already, in a roller coaster of emotions because things are not going fine or too fast or too little or whatever. And so setting boundaries from the start of whatever you want to name it is about knowing where you are going. It is about your vision on life, on the world, on others, on yourself. It is about your mission. And also, it is about your values. And if you do not have these three elements clear, it's very, very difficult to set your boundaries. And you might set them and they will change, or they will be very volatile or flexible, and you will indeed have a problem saying no because you have not discussed the boundaries with your partner, with your business partner, with your spouse, or whoever is involved. So it is not something that you just out of the blue install somewhere once it is like almost too late. And I see that we do that. We do post factum boundary settings. While it is a very good idea, and of course you can say, yeah, but it's too late now. This is something that you can start practicing, and you can have new conversations, setting rules of engagement with whoever is involved in your life, professional and privately, and where you feel that things are not working. Because boundaries you can set together with your other stakeholders. Because if you just put them like that, like a stake in the ground, like that's enough, I mean, you can expect resistance, right? This is not going to work. It is about having the interaction and looking for a fair, sustainable way of working together, relating, interacting with everybody that is involved in whatever endeavor. Does that make sense?
That makes
100%.
beautiful sense, and I agree with you 110%. And Beverly
Mhm.
really got us moving on this subject. And when I think of boundaries, I think of definition, not limitation, right? Here's where I'm going to play, here's where I'm going to go. And also, I agree with you, Helena, is getting up front is so much better than trying to fix it after it's already out of the gate. And you can expand boundaries, you can bring boundaries in. So they're responsive to the situation. If you're comfortable, and I think you brought a key word up, Helena, is sustainable. And that also lends itself to what Beverly was saying about self-care. Why not be well provisioned? Why not have enough support? Why not have enough belief and confidence? And why not allow oneself to learn as one goes? And again, as you get more information, it either sustains those boundaries or allows them to change. And most people today don't have to have a 30-year plan or a 10-year plan. Most of them just have to get a get started plan and then work with it and then work it up, because it's constant attention, it's constant effort, but it's also constant joy if you're with the right people, doing the right things the right way, and everybody's on the same page. I've learned nobody likes surprises, good or bad, especially if you knew up front what the surprise was. And some people just want to bring people in and then hope something makes it happen or they can work with that, but that's really not fair to everybody. Here's some more comments. They came in pretty fast today. Dennis says sharing and caring helps us. Uh, Thanks, Beverly. Most of the time, jokes can fall out of my head. Then, if not, I can find them online. No limit to your resources. Kelly's here. I can't talk enough about Kelly. We've done at least 100 shows over the last year. Kelly does every Thursday. Also, want to promote her show, The Awesome Journey with Christy Howard. That's on at 1 p.m. Tuesdays. Connie's here. Connie's just a wonderful individual, too. Had
Yeah.
Connie on the show. I've talked to Connie before. Glad to have you from Maryland. My son actually is out in Baltimore, so we have that in common. Dennis comes back with agree if you lose stuff in the mix, you do get mixed up and down. Dennis, our rhymer, agrees setting the stake in the ground is so much better than setting the mistake. So true. Beverly, it's so great to have a supportive audience.
Always. Yeah. Wonderful. And yeah, ask your questions also in the chat if you have any problems with boundaries. So many people have said to me, that's is my problem, particularly when I was younger. It was hard for me to set boundaries. I was a people pleaser. I was someone that tried to please every single person. And who pleased me, I felt bad that nobody really cared. And that's the thing. If you don't set your own boundaries, and as Helena said, they have to be sustainable. If you don't set those sustainable boundaries, people do not know. So they will cross your boundaries unintentionally. And that's where the problem comes in because you feel you have to support more, you have to give more, nobody cares for you, you're drained. And so boundaries have to be sustainable. Often it's easier in the work life to have boundaries than to go back into your home life where other people can cross your boundaries. You can have children, you can have other people, that friends, which don't understand that perhaps you are tired or you can't go to this event all the time or you're just not up to it. So people will understand, but it's up to you to set those boundaries. And I'm looking when I'm thinking of quite a few people with adult children who they didn't really set boundaries for. And I'm thinking of clients, I'm thinking of former clients, and that when they are older, the boundaries still are not set. And there's an expectation that you still have to give, and very often it's financial, or you still have to be of service. And I find people, particularly who are thinking of retirement, and their children are saying, oh, great, because I need caregiving for my children. And that is a conflict because there is guilt because I didn't really spend all that much time with my children because I was busy working, and now they're asking me to do this. And am I a bad person because I want a life too? Of course I love my grandchildren. So this is the conflict that women have a lot. And I don't know, Dawn, you're speaking perhaps for the whole male population, but I don't know if men actually feel it as much as women, because the caregiving role essentially has been ours. And so to set boundaries that, sure, I can do this, but I'll do this at a certain time. And I know that I've had friends, or have friends that have said back in the day that, oh, you're so lucky that you're always working. It's like you can just shut the door. People understand. And that door is your boundary. So if you're going to work, fine, you do have to set boundaries in your professional life as well, but in the home life as well too. You can't overcompensate by saying, I feel guilty because I'm gone all day and I have to overdo and show them my love with money and more attention and give more and do more. So boundaries have to be set with you, as Helena said, consistently. And that gives respect. It gives respect to others, but they will respect you as well because they know. They know what is right for you. And quite frankly, they appreciate that. It's appreciated all the time when people know what they cannot do, serve, and you can all really enjoy each other in a heck of a lot better without resentment.
Well, that,
Helena.
that makes so much sense. And looking back, and tomorrow I'll be celebrating our 46th wedding anniversary. So,
Great.
and me and Ann have been together forever. But I find that shared responsibilities make a lot of sense when you're with somebody, whether what other partnership you might have with them, is understanding the load they're carrying and volunteering to say, let me take some of that off of you, because everything is relative and conditional, right? You can do this, but when that happens, now that has an impact, and it's the people around you to say, hey, let me help you out a little bit, Let me support you. And support is so important. But I think at the base of it all, or the root, is communication. So nothing's set in stone. Here's how we're going to start. Here's why we're going to do what we're going to do. But as things change, we're going to get our heads together and say, okay, now this is a new development. What role does this play? How does this affect our boundaries? And also, I think it's important to have trust, because you can have bigger, stronger, wider boundaries when you're not thinking about the other person's intentions. When you're thinking, what is this all about? So it's definitely a little noise in the background. But Helena, what's your thoughts?
Well, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, Don, and I so recognize your stories and anecdotes, Beverly. And I do believe that boundary setting is not something rude or impolite or aggressive or neglective. I do believe that boundary setting is something that you do systemically. I mean, you don't by definition do this on your own. Yes, you do it when it's too much. When you're frustrated, you said, no, it's enough, you know. But
Yeah.
boundary setting is about, as I said, the rules of engagement. That means that you negotiate. It's like a little negotiation game. And like Don says, if there are variables, then you need to renegotiate. And of course, trust is involved, because if you know that your intentions are good and that you are looking for the long run and that you are looking for the benefit of everybody involved, then there will be a lot more willingness to be a little bit flexible, that what is agreed on and what is committed to is in the best interest of everybody for the long term. And everybody knows if things are changing, that then it can be renegotiated. And that is very, very important, because boundary setting is something where we need to be assertive, not aggressive, not passive, not allowing everything and then becoming aggressive or passive aggressive. It is about assertiveness. It is about understanding the interests of everybody involved and the needs of everybody involved, and having all these needs on the table and then see how you can work around that. And of course, like as a grandparent, you can say, no, no, it's my time. I don't take up the role of a kindergarten, but you could also say like, okay, this is what I need. Now I am a pensionista, I'm retired, and this is what you need. And let's see where we find common grounds and how we can make arrangements without being both, feeling an overkill in one direction or the other. And so negotiation on boundaries is important. I do believe there are boundaries that you do not need to negotiate. I mean, if we are talking about physical boundaries, I mean, with children, but also adults, who is allowed to touch you, who is allowed to come very close. These are boundaries that are non-negotiable. Yeah. But there are boundaries, especially in our interactions with others, that are negotiable at any time. And if there's trust and good intentions, it cannot go wrong.
No, no.
Beverly, your thoughts?
I think the key also, Helena, is when you said it's a good thing. If somebody understands you and you understand their boundaries, you have more of a connection. And so the boundary isn't limiting you. You just know, and you're just comfortable with each other. And nobody is pushing to get more than the other. And when you think of a child here, mommy, I want, mommy, I want, mommy, I want, right? It's not the child's fault. If the mom gives sometimes or not gives other times and the child gets all upset, boundaries have to be consistent, as you were saying, Helena, So what it is of course, to give and let the other person understand, depending what's going on. Boundaries are give and take. It's not only take and take, because then you haven't set your boundary, you're moving in the other direction, and you will push back, as Helena was saying, and you can get angry, and you can be upset and feel that you're not heard, whatever it is, you know? So boundaries, if you think that you've had a problem with that, I want you to start trying to set baby steps in saying no. Because a lot of people do have a problem with saying no and say it's easier to give in or get someone else to do it and get them to get what they actually want than to be assertive and say, no, this is too much for me, or I think what you're asking for is out of the question, or perhaps do it yourself, or I'm not part of the triangle. That's another thing. Women are very often called into the triangulation. She said, he said, whatever, and you fix it, right? What you're doing is actually crossing other people's boundaries. It is not for you to have to fix everything. So just think about it. If you're not fixing, don't you have more time for yourself? How cool is that? So women have a problem, a lot of women have a problem getting involved by helping. And there's nothing wrong with helping, but is it about you or are you helping someone else? Are you causing more chaos in that mix? And that's a boundary too. If it's a problem between her and her, don't fix it. They're the ones that have to fix it. Your boundary is to stay out of it. And they may want to bring you into that mix, which relieves them. And then it's a whole drama scene, etc., etc. So boundaries come in so many different forms. But the only way to find it is to read yourself. Am I involved in this? Is this about me? Do I need my space? If it is yes, and you have to notice, you can't just step in and do and not think, because then you get caught one way or the other. You will do too much, you'll get involved in something much too much, whatever it is, there's a lot of too much. And so think about it, but baby steps if you have a problem with boundaries, because you can really burn out on so many levels and you can get involved in dramas that have nothing to do with you. And you know what? It'll all fall back on you in the long run. So, yeah, keep your boundaries strong, but flexible if necessary. But don't allow anyone or anything to overstep, because you will be hurt. And it's your fault, not theirs.
Well, I think you make great points there, and it is what it is. And you are who you are. And it's only fair that everybody understands that going in. It's like, I don't work weekends, or, I can only do this during this time. And it might be, hey, well, that doesn't work. Well, better to find out early than everybody getting comfortably uncomfortable along the way. That people are not sharing that, hey, I don't like that, I don't care for that, or for whatever reason. And I think the big question most people don't ask is why. And once you can figure out someone's why, you can get understanding. And even if you don't understand, at least you respect their boundaries because they were open and sharing and took a risk. Because anybody can say goodbye at any time if it's a free and open relationship. And a lot of times it gives you an opportunity to say, well, now that you mentioned that, here's a couple things I don't like to get beyond, right? And after a while, people are like, okay, here's 4 things that we don't want to move into for you. Here's 2, 3 things that I respect your boundaries. And I think it is respect and honoring somebody to say, even if it's not the way I do things, you're entitled to do it your way. And I can work with that, or I can't work with that under whatever conditions. And maybe we got to revisit this, or maybe it was just getting nice to know you, because I'd rather do more with less people than less with more people I don't really know. And once you build the foundation, And once you have that experience, that has huge value as opposed to just, having this going on and for 6 months and then start a new deal with someone else. And you have to say hi. So, Helena,
I would like to add something, especially Beverly, when you say learning how to set boundaries, learning how to say no, and taking baby steps. I would also suggest that you start with yourself. Because chances are, if you have a problem setting boundaries in general, you always also have a problem to set boundaries for yourself. And I'm talking about boundaries in terms of how do you divide your work time and your private time? How long do you watch Netflix? How often do you go to sleep to bed very, very late because you're doing things that you are not supposed to do at that time? How often are you on your phone doing things that are not productive? So there's basically, this is also setting boundaries, and this is setting boundaries for ourselves. So if you have a problem setting boundaries, I would suggest that you start with yourself and that you check for yourself where you cross your own boundaries in terms of self-care, in terms of health, setting boundaries in terms of how much chocolate you eat, things like that. And we are all human, so we all do this. It's not like I'm not finger pointing. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things that we do to ourselves. We don't need others to do things to us. We don't need others to, cross the lines. We cross the lines very often ourselves. And the easiest way, sometimes it's the hardest way, but the easiest way to learn to say no is to start with yourself and build your boundaries gradually to yourself. And guess what? If you do that, other people will see that. Other people will notice because you will have a different presence. You will show up in a different way. And it will make things easier step by step to set boundaries also externally to others because you have taken it as a principle for yourself. You have like incorporated, embodied it. And then it's also easier to manifest that externally. So my suggestion is start with your internal boundaries. Make a list of all the things where you are crossing the line yourself and you know it. And I mean, it's not like we have to live perfect lives, but sometimes we consistently do things that we know are not good for us, especially in the area of self-care. And I cannot say enough how important this self-care is for us in order to build resilience, to build a healthy life in all aspects. And so, baby steps, start with yourself. That's my advice, if I may.
that's beautiful advice, and so happy you're able to provide that. We've got Leslie Flowers here who's commenting on some background noise. I don't hear it right now, but I heard it before. Thank you, Leslie. Leslie has two great shows. She has Think and Grow Rich on Fridays, which is a video event, and then she has Mind Over Matter on Mondays. I recommend both shows highly. Leslie's just a great colleague and a person that has tremendous wisdom and knowledge. So, and then Dennis says, agree, we have to be bound to set and get boundaries. So, with that, Beverly, how do we make this even more valuable for everybody listening?
Okay, first of all, thank you, Leslie. Okay, and thank you, Leslie, also for promoting everybody else, because that's something that Leslie does all the time, and she always oversteps and just helps everybody. And so I just want to thank you and thank you for being here. Um, boundaries. I'm getting back to setting my boundaries and talking. Okay, um, which is not only Helena. I was thinking exactly what you were, so I'm going to kind of piggyback on that. The phone, okay? Text messages. People also have to know that there are certain times where you're not going to be answering texts. But even if you don't tell them and they disrespect it, you can put it on focus. You do not have to jump to everyone else's demands. Much like Helena was saying, We have to know what's right for ourselves. And today in our worlds, we can work 24/7. People can have you 24/7. Nobody seems to, it doesn't really matter. You rise, you take a look at social media, people are on day and night. It doesn't matter. What matters though is that you have a life too. And you have to know when to shut down. And you have to be very organized as to what you need. And back to the self care, what happens very often is if we don't set those boundaries, we are the last ones to take care of ourselves. We'll take care of every single other thing, business, people, friends, you name it. And that's where setting boundaries with yourself is so difficult because then you're so stressed out. Ah, boy, does that cake look good? Okay. Or I will diet tomorrow. Well, when you do say things like that, you're putting yourself after somebody else because if you are stressed, what's wrong with saying, I need a break? I don't need the cake now. What I need is to relax, perhaps with a cup of tea, perhaps just go outside, perhaps meditate. That's taking care of yourself. And that is self care. But if you don't set those times up with boundaries, you won't have time because something else will take priority. There's always something else. And so in our day to day, which goes faster and faster, we have to know and we have to set time for things that really matter. And so take a look at all the things that you do in a day and all the things you want to do. And then what you have to do is prioritize. And those priorities are your boundaries. And there should be some that are negotiable and there's some that are non negotiable, like self care, like getting off at the computer at a certain time, like starting at the computer at a certain time, like not answering a zillion emails that are not important. And then your whole day is backed up. Those are all boundaries, and those have to be limited and use agendas, use apps, use all that's out there that can help you set boundaries. But that phone, all that technology, all that stuff that is so important to be done all the time by everyone else, it's up to you. It's all about you. What's your priority? Those are your boundaries.
Yeah, well, I believe what we're dealing with too is discipline, sticking with your boundaries, you know, prioritizing, know what's most important at what time, and creating balance, which is so important because when you're out of balance, nothing is comfortable. You know, if you're running from behind all the time or you're getting too far ahead of yourself, it's really measuring yourself, you know, because it is a marathon and not a sprint. And you want to be there and at the end of the race and be happy that you ran the race. I think the other critical element is finding like minded people to start with, right? When you have a lot in common, when you share a lot of common beliefs, you won't have to worry about boundaries as much because everybody's already within those boundaries, you know, and who is fair, who is honest, and who really goes out of their way to say, is there anything else I can do? Or I've got a little bit extra time if there's something you want to share that I can handle for you, because what comes around goes around, right? And it's all reciprocal, especially on networks and platforms like this, is a kind gesture, which is kind of rare for someone to initiate. Kind gestures are usually coming in compensation for an earlier gesture. So why not take that first step, get the game going? And then if no one responds, well, that tells you better to learn early and inexpensively, whether it's time or resources, than think something without really knowing and then being surprised and finding out and being disappointed. Because when you break that trust, it's, first of all, it's hard to get back. And the second of all, you feel like you've been taken advantage of.
Mhm.
And you, and if your intention was collaboration and support and working together, it makes you a little bit less secure next time you enter a relationship. So Helena, what's your new thoughts on this?
Well, I would love to invite everybody to have these conversations, like you say, quite regularly and keep them like reflection moments. And you can have these in your family, like um, I would say every first Friday evening of the month, something like that. Or you can have them with your teams or with business partners in terms of how do we feel that things are going, because sometimes there's this energy that you cannot really define, or things are not moving. The goals are not reached. There's no commitment to go the extra mile. And so having these conversations in a trustful space is basically a very good way to evaluate the boundaries, to see where they need to be adapted, because especially in the world we live in, like right now, there's so many things going on. There's so many things that are changing, that are accelerating, that are slowing down, that are starting, that are stopping, that we also need to review the way that we deal with each other, that we interact. So having these reflections once and again in terms of what works well, how is everybody feeling with the results, and what could we do better, and how can we agree on new processes or procedures, if you want to call it like that, or if in terms of arrangements, then I believe that it keeps out the frustration, it keeps out irritation, and it keeps out the response in terms of like, no, it's enough, no, I stop, no, I quit, things like that, because everything is building up each other. So having these conversations regularly are a very good way to keep everything, everybody in an open level.
Mhm. I all of a sudden you went very, very low. So I'm not sure, Don, what you said, but did you, I don't know, did you
No, I
defer to
just I was
me?
just
Oh, now
asking.
you're back. Okay,
Yeah,
you're back.
what were your thoughts on what Helena was just saying?
Okay. Yes, what you're saying, Helena, is communication. Communicate with others, communicate what you need. But to that point, sometimes we communicate too much. And when we are talking too much, we can also bring ourselves down the rabbit hole. And I'm giving an explanation for what I just said, meaning if you're setting a boundary, no, I can't. Okay. That's pretty simple, right? No, I'm sorry, I really can't. Simple. But a lot of people say, well, they're not going to understand. And then what happens is you can go on with a story. I can't because, and you go on to why you can't. And if somebody really, really is not used to you setting boundaries, they will look at that as if maybe there's a loophole where you can. And the longer you tell your story, the more you're giving them loopholes. And so it's like, but what if? And then before you know it, your boundary may be shot and you will find that you are doing it. So to keep your boundaries simple is the way to go. And I see this so many times with women. Too much explanation. Men are much easier, cut and dry, like, nope, that's it, that's all. and but a woman has a tendency of explaining and over explaining, and the more you explain, the more someone can find, yeah, but maybe on Friday, then you and so before you know it, you're caught. And so if you're going to be setting boundaries, a simple no, no, thank you, no, I'm good, no, I don't like cheesecake, thank you very much. Yes, you may have made it, especially for my birthday, but it's not my thing. But you don't have to be rude. But but whatever it is, it's your boundary. Okay.
Mm.
And so you don't let people cross it. And no, you're not being rude. You say it nicely, but you are being rude. If your boundary is crossed, you get frustrated and you will be saying something that you don't really want to, because it's just going to come off your head. So, you have to think, take care of yourself. And like Helena was saying, self care. is setting boundaries, and don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make, again, so many valuable points because it is based on communication. And some people get kind of wishy washy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they give you a little bit, but they don't give you the whole story, and it makes it for more confusing. Or people say this today and you believe it, next week they say something completely different. And now you don't know what it is you're supposed to do. So I think people have to be sensitive to what people are saying, but also ask questions if they don't understand. It's easy to say, I'm a little confused here. There's some dissonance, or there's something that doesn't make sense. And again, it could be someone didn't explain it enough, or someone isn't comfortable talking about it because that's one of their boundaries to begin with. And I think that's where trust and experience comes in, that slowly walls start breaking down and bridges start getting built. And then people really can say, this is worthwhile, because it's rare to have open, honest communications with people that last over time. And at a certain point, you forget about your concerns and you start thinking about your opportunities, right? You switch from defense to more proactivity, where in the beginning is, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want someone to take advantage of me. So you're focused on everything that could happen. And then once you realize it's not going to happen, or this person isn't the kind of person who would want that to happen, now you can focus on the activity that brought you together in the first place. Um, so, Helena, I see Jason Gerardo's here. I can always tell
Oh,
when it's a LinkedIn user, or or uh, or Jason. Dennis comes back with agree getting down the bunny hole is not the funny hole. We need to follow our boundaries. Another one, agree we need to communicate before we date and don't be late. And, communication is key for every relationship, even if it's not significant. Plus, there is something to honoring yourself, to knowing you stood up for what you believed in, and that you can do that. Because how many people set boundaries and then don't respect their own boundaries? So once you put a stake in the ground, it should mean something. And I think that's important. So, Helena, when we look at boundaries, it has so much implication in relationships. Uh, how have you learned about boundaries?
Oh, how have I learned about boundaries? I guess we all get aware of the boundaries the moment they are crossed. Yeah. And it is about trusting our feelings there. If we get angry or frustrated or irritated, it means a boundary is crossed. And the thing that we can do then is check what is going on here, what values are in place here. And sometimes it is about things that happened already for a long time. And then suddenly it's like you have enough of it. This is something that I've been asked by clients and in general very often, like, okay, um, I became aware of the fact that somebody is systematically crossing my boundaries. But know what? I have been allowing him or her to do this for so long, and now I feel like I cannot say anything about that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Absolutely. I would. This is just a tip, a practical tip, in terms of not letting your emotions play there, because basically your emotions are directed to this person or these people and yourself also, because you have allowed it. There's also a lot of anger and resentment to yourself. So let this out, breathe this out. Don't start a conversation when you are in the middle of these emotions. And then you can say, like, okay, I know this has been arranged like this for many, many years, and I'm not feeling okay with this. I do not want to continue like this. So, how can we make sure that we still achieve this or this goal or this joint project without this or this happening? Yeah. For example, I have been, I'm just imagining now, I have been the one taking the children to hockey every Wednesday. And I'm doing this now for 2 years, and I'm very happy to, to be the driver. The thing is that I don't feel that I should be doing this every week. I feel that there's no balance in the responsibilities. And I would like to find a solution that's okay for everybody and that's workable for everybody, where there's a more, there's more balance in the contribution or the participation, period. And then let them come up with things. Like Beverly says, don't start with excuses or finding things like, because then you are basically, one of the reasons you do that is because you feel guilty that you do not live up to that commitment anymore. And we all like to please so much, especially as women. But just let the people come with the solutions. Maybe somebody will say, yes, we actually, we've been thinking about that too. But because you never said anything, we thought it was fine. But if you look at it like that, yes, let's see how we can find a solution. And then you find a solution with all the people involved. So it is about, you always can start over. Even if you feel like, I have allowed this for so long, I didn't speak up for so long. Today is the day. You can do this. And if it doesn't work today, then you can do it tomorrow. But it's not because you haven't said something that you should keep it like that for the rest of, for the rest of your life. Does that make sense?
It makes beautiful sense. And, not everything is equal and not everybody likes the same things. And sometimes it's a trade off. Like some
Mhm.
people like to drive and some people don't. But the person who likes to drive should drive, right? But the other person understands, hey, that's a pretty good sacrifice or commitment. I'm going to start doing some housework for you, right? I mean, so eventually it's just being
I like
recognized.
that.
I think that's where most people get disappointed is people get taken for granted. People assume that because you do it every week, you're going to do it every week. And there's a point also when you have to look at short term and long term. So you might say, hey, I'm under the weather this week. I'm not going to be able to sustain what we had going, but I hope to get better next week. Or, so, if somebody just moved in with me and kids or parents, and it's going to take an adjustment on my part, which is going to take adjustment with everybody I'm participating with. And again, it's understanding because most people, if you don't tell them enough, they don't know enough. If you tell them too much, they know too much. So I think the boundaries are is how much can you trust people with what? Is it going to be confidential? Is it going to be secure? And again, you get feedback. And I think Helena makes a great point. Is not everything is an overnight thing. It takes work and it takes time. So somebody might say, I'm not ready to make that adjustment, right? But give me some time, or let's keep talking about it and let's hope to reach a common ground here. Because you're always going to have challenges, no matter who you're with, no matter what it is. The other thing is to make things about it and not you. I think Helena made a good point is that if you get emotional, if you take things personal that weren't always meant to be, well, that's your responsibility, But if you work towards a common good, like together, we're going to make our household budget. We're going to have to save, or we're going to have to generate some income, but at least everybody needs to know where are we on this journey. Are we getting ahead of ourselves? Are we falling behind? And the other main thing is happiness, because that should be the rule of thumb. At the end of the day, are you really happy? Are you proud of who you are and what you're doing? And if you're successful, that's enough right there because you're on track and your boundaries are holding and you're not being intimidated. And some people, whether knowingly or not knowingly, they test your boundaries just to see how firm you are. Because if they step over and nothing happens, well, how much more can I step over? And I think that's up to you to say, hey, I allowed it because it was once in a while. Now it's becoming consistent. Doesn't work that way anymore. And if you don't have the freedom to share your true voice, you're in a bad relationship. If you can't say what you know you need to say and somebody needs to hear, Well, that's something that needs to be addressed, and not everything is forever. Some people come into your life just for a short period and play a major role, but they're not long termers. And you need to give yourself that same grace to say, I'm not going to overcommit. Everything is going to be based on something that justifies something else. And I think that's where a lot of us can look back at experience. And in the beginning, you're kind of ignorant and you're new to things and you don't understand it. As you get older, looking back, you start to put together what did work, how did it work, and now how do I want to make it work? Because I think in the beginning, you're more tolerant, you accept things because you're not aware of them. And then later on, you say, no, that's not who I am. And I'm done with that. I've had enough. And I think change is something that's always going to happen. How do you meet change and how do you build on change? So, Beverly, 55 minutes in, it goes so quick.
Moving along. Okay. Where do we go from here? Whoa. I'm going to talk about the boundaries, as Helena was saying very often in the workplace. Sometimes people cross your boundaries, and it could be a superior that happens to be a bully. And what happens here is you still had a boundary that was crossed. And that can be very threatening because this can be the person that is responsible for your job, responsible for your career, responsible, writes the checks, perhaps. Who knows? Okay. This is where you still have a boundary to set, and it's up to you to be assertive enough to get the respect that you need by telling that person. In other words, standing up to the bully, but this is in an adult version. And it has a lot more pressure than the bully in the schoolyard because this guy does perhaps write the checks or whatever. It's still your boundary. And that's something that should not be crossed. And I'm going to give you an example. Back when I was interning, I worked in a rehab, and it was a wonderful experience working with all kinds of people, really heavy duty stuff. And I loved the work. But here I was, just an intern. And down there are, in any rehab, there's a heck of a lot of drama going on. And the caseworkers up there were up in their eyeballs in stress. I love this work. But not everybody does. Very often they're just getting their hours. And what happened was, well, the head of this rehab happened to have like lost his temper. And I had just finished a group, and he lashed out to me like he lashed out to everybody else. And in the beginning, I was taken back. But then afterwards, I said, what am I going to do? Okay. What I did was I said, you know, I want to set an appointment with you. His name was Jerry. I went into the office and I said, Jerry, I have to work here. I said, what you did was completely disrespectful. I just said that. And he said, I'm sorry. And he said, and I said, yep, and you should be. That's just what I said. And he laughed. And guess what? We were best of friends. He was the first to ask me to have a job there, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone else hated this man, but I got to understand him a lot. And this is the point. My boundary was, if you're working here with people that, are out of control, we're talking all kinds of different people. It's a rehab. And I'm not talking a physical rehab. This was drugs, alcohol, people from prison, you name it. Okay. Serious business here. Don't respect me. They may disrespect me enough. So to Helena's point, you have to respect yourself, whether it's taking care of doing all the driving or being overworked or threatened at work. Find a spot, get the communication. Everybody, even the serious bully, is a human being and will get it. if you're able to talk to them, if you get to understand where they're coming from, they're stressed too. But to Helena's point, you don't go crazy, you don't get over dramatic. You just understand that this is your boundary and they've lost it. And people that lose it, by the way, that's whether it's an abusive partner, an abusive boss, they will become more abusive if you allow it. So your boundary has to really be no, no, I'm not going to tolerate any of that. And even if I have to walk, I will. Okay. You are more important than that.
That's so valuable and so important because you know who you are is your belief in what your value is to yourself and to others. And when people recognize that and respect you, you feel like, hey, that's reinforcing. And when they don't, it creates an opportunity for a quality question. So now that we're at top of the hour, what's your final thoughts, Helena? It was so nice to have you for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, and especially in the situation that Beverly brought up, in terms of if you are bullied or if you are dealing with a boss that has a very, positional um, disadvantage, I would also say seek help. If you cannot do it on your own, seek help because it is so important that you do something. Because if you don't, once again, like Beverly says, it will end up wrong anyway. So you can better, shorten the pain and go directly. But I understand that sometimes it's very difficult to do that because the power positions, and then there are people who can help you. You don't always have to do this alone, setting your boundaries. And if you are like in a process of boundary setting and you feel a little bit insecure, don't start there. Start small, start with the baby steps, also like Beverly said, and just build that boundary muscle. We all have it. We all have the capacity. You have to believe in yourself that you can do it and that you have the right to do it. It is your birthright to be respected and to have your integrity in every aspect that you can imagine. So take the baby steps and just go there and set those boundaries. Yeah.
Well, I think the great points you just made is there's people like Helena, Beverly, and other people who are experienced and can help you and support you. And if you don't have what it takes or aren't comfortable with that, get some support. Build up your team that can help you and guide you and make it a little bit easier in order to do that. So, last thoughts on your side.
Yeah, my last tips as well, along with Helena. Yes, don't take giant leaps. Definitely start small. Read yourself, your own limitations. That is your boundary. How much will you take? Remember, be assertive. Say no. But if you're not assertive, you'll become aggressive. You don't want to be aggressive. So you may as well say no. A little no counts, and you don't have to make any excuses. And also, absolutely, if you need any help at all, please contact me. I always will have a free call, 15 minutes. You can find that on my profile. And I'm going to also give you a link where you can get a quiz to find out, are you really ready to change? It's a reinvention quiz. And so my parting thought is set boundaries and you will feel so much better. You really will. Dawn?
Well, thank you both. I'm so excited by the conversation we were just able to have, starting from scratch without a script, letting the show and the audience take us where it needed to go. And I believe we provided a lot of quality takeaways, but this is the day that things can change. This is the day you can network with the people who are here, can learn from each other, can grow with each other. And, when you're not alone, that in itself is a positive situation, right? Because you tend to be either your best friend or your worst enemy, and you want to be somewhere in the middle again. So I want to thank everybody. Please come back tomorrow. We'll have Jason Gerardo with Dave Snell who are going to be working on life transition, primarily moving from military to civilian life. And then Thursday, we're going to have Jason with Kelly because this is Mental Health Awareness Week. And they're focused on mental health awareness, so that'll be the show. And I can't thank everybody enough for taking the time and the effort and the thought today to make this special. And just so thankful to Beverly, Helena, and the audience. And with that said, come back in 23 hours and we'll continue our approach to our future